3 to right of takeoff. 9.
3 to right of takeoff, Malaysia 67. Thank you.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
From Kuala Lumpur International Airport, the Boeing 777 prepares for departure. Flight MH370 of Malaysia Airlines. It is a daily flight of the Malaysian capital, Kuala Lumpur, and the Chinese capital, Beijing. I give her permission to take off for the flight. MH370 at 45 minutes past midnight. It was commanded by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, and First Lieutenant General Abdul Hamid. With a crew of 10 and 227 passengers, after less than an hour of flying time, the plane was flying 35 feet over the South China Sea. The night sky was clear and the weather calm. Flight MH370 was instructed to signal air traffic control at Hoc Minh, Vietnam, near entering the Vietnamese airspace. The flight controller in Kuala Lumpur said goodnight, without any indication of anything wrong. After a minute and 43 seconds, the plane suddenly disappeared from the radar screens. In Kuala Lumpur, Hoc Minh, and Bangkok. This type of positional tracking relies on the signal being emitted from one of two transducers, processed and on board. And the disappearance of the plane means the loss of both, of its ability to perform its functions, or that the system has been disabled manually by one of them on board. All attempts to communicate or find out what happened to HM370 or its location failed. The plane disappeared without a trace after 4 hours. On her scheduled arrival time in Beijing officially announced about the disappearance of flight MH370, and in the wake of this announcement, the most expensive and difficult search and rescue operation is about to begin. The search initially focused on the location of the plane's disappearance, between the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand, but the scope of the search was soon expanded, after the military forces revealed Malaysian unveiling new information reversed the normal radar systems used by air traffic control. Long-range military radars do not depend on frequency signals, but it uses reflection to track the locations of air targets. A review of the data he obtained revealed the Malaysian military, minutes after the loss of flight MH370. The flight deviated from its intended destination, taking a mysterious turn to the right the first time, followed by a big turn to the left, after which the plane returned to Malaysia, and crossed the Malaysian peninsula, before turning right off Pahang Hong Island. After that, the plane maintained a northwesterly course, until I got out of the radar coverage area. Over the next few days, all rescue teams searched from multinational aircraft. It is a multinational marine legends as well. No trace of flight MH370 was found. In the meantime, investigators began analyzing the aircraft's communications records via satellite. All modern airlines, flight MH370 was equipped with a satellite communication unit, a terminal or SATCOM to send and receive signals to and from the Earth, and upon takeoff, the space terminal recorded access to the satellite network. The satellite made contact with a ground station in Purvey, Australia, after which this station kept a detailed record of the incoming and outgoing data traffic between it and flight MH370. This is what the data contained before the flight disappeared over the South China Sea. Everything seemed to go as planned. Then, at some point during this part of the trip, he broke contact with Sankum. And the reason why the station stopped responding. To respond, but 3 minutes after the disappearance of the flight over the Andaman Sea, the station usually asked to log in again to the network. Suncom reconnected successfully, and it was not interrupted until 6 hours had passed, almost from flying when it was from the plane is supposed to have crashed, as a result of running out of fuel. During the last hours, 2 attempts were made to re-establish contact with the plane via satellite communication. They are identified by the Sancom terminal, and they are sent back to the command station, though there is no answer for them. The station also responded to 5 stable automatic messages. It relates to a status request, in short, If the ground station does not receive a call from the aircraft within the hour, it transforms the signal to make sure that the SATCOM terminal is still connected, even though these signals are converted. Devoid of any location information, the investigators were able to measure the distance between the satellite and the aircraft, at the moment of transmission of each of the transmitted signals, depending on the time it took for each of these signals between being sent and received. This data gave 7 rings of possible subjects. Where these signals could have come from, and taking into account fuel consumption, speed, and other factors, analysis of the plane's final trajectory indicated that the most likely source of the final signal could be somewhere in this arc. In the southern Indian Ocean, as a result of these investigations, the efforts at sea were diverted, and since the area was located within Australian territorial waters, the Australian government took the task upon itself, and over the course of a few weeks, the search area was reconfigured to include oceanic decline, in addition to better forecasts about the path the plane took. But this part of the southern Indian Ocean is very harsh and it takes only 6 days to get there, and gradually new legends of ships and planes cover an area of more than 4.5 million square kilometers of ocean. But the flight MH370 was not anywhere from this area that could be to find her. The search that covered the surface was from March 8 to April 28. If the collision with the ocean surface had been strong enough, the resulting sound could have been recorded by hydrophones. Or the hydrophones, and these were eliminated, and 4 of the sound convergence stations associated with the underwater speakers recorded something. Recorded by a station capturing underwater sounds near the Australian island of Root Nest, and despite the disciplines of both the timing and direction of this sound, with the last indication of the satellites, but the expected source, it was not the case at the source of this sound. It is geological events. Probably. Flight MH370 was also equipped with 2 locators, underwater. Enjoy a 40-day battery life for each of them. Their savings were running out. In early April, signals similar in frequency and pulse to the signals were picked up by these 2 pilots from depths of 3,000 meters. An independent submersible then spent weeks scanning the ocean floor, picking up the signal without getting any debris. Nor was anything, after 16 months. Months after the accident, something was discovered on the opposite side of the Indian Ocean. On July 19, 2015, there was a group of people. They were cleaning the beach of Ririan Island, a small island located east of Madagascar. When they found this 2-meter-long metal object, the airline experts quickly recognized it. On this body they said it was part of the wing of the plane, known as the flip-flop, and after many investigations and consideration, 2 and internal tags. The joint venture experts, dates and serial numbers, concluded with certainty that this flip-flop belonged to flight MH370. Although the island of Ririan, located 4 meters from the search area, and the passage of more than a year on the disappearance of the plane, but expected. It came in agreement with the simulation process, which was conducted on the potential models of debris propagation. There is now tangible evidence that flight MH370 crashed somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. The discovery of the wing flaps of the plane sparked, which carried flight MH370 Alainen in the search process along the shores of southern and eastern Africa and its maritime borders, and at least 31 other interesting items were found. And of course I checked all of these items, including some of these items, parts of the outer fender of the right wing, and cut it from one of the engines of the plane's cover, partly a piece of the landing gear, the rear and part of the vertical stabilizer, a deformed cushion of one of the headrests, placed on the seats. 18 of these items are classified under the categories of probable, highly probable, and mostly confirmed and traced back to flight MH370. Their origin is confirmed from the plane. MH370 is just 3 components. As for the remaining 11 elements, it did not fall into the category of classification in the first place. All parts of the wreckage have been found, which proved her return to the flight. From any traces of the explosion, as well as from any traces of fires except for 3 signs of fire found on one of the parts, which are not included in the classification. Satellite searches for debris were lost. Earth monitors, satellite analysis dating back to March revealed 2014 a number of pictures that show bodies. man-made and floating on the surface of the southern Indian Ocean. But the images were not accurate enough to know which objects were identified. This wreck was not known, despite the conduct of many searches, and a satellite image captured, hours after the last signal, and it appears to be from the wreckage of a precious plane, showed close to the search area. However, a later analysis proved that this debris is a shadow formed by somewhat linear clouds. The search continued under the surface of the water for months and years, until the search process was officially suspended in 2017. In the search process, an area of 121,000 square meters was covered from the ocean floor. The search was then resumed by a U.S. marine salvage company. But after a year-long search, this fictional company came out. From any results, but at least places can be determined. The flight MH370 landed in. The real cause of the plane crash may not have been determined yet. On the day of the plane's disappearance, 2 passengers were raised, under suspicion of obtaining forged passports. The fears were that the plane had been hijacked. But investigators have not been linked to the suspects. What terrorist organization? They soon decided that they had traveled under false identities, seeking political asylum, without any intention of a terrorist act. The Malaysian police suspect him to be the flight engineer, and his views on the missing plane and his biography are suspicious. One of the passengers was a flight engineer, probably experienced enough to fly a Boeing 777, and usually the 239 people on board. In flight MH370, 11 tons of payload and items are included, in the payload of the aircraft. There was a charge of country ion batteries. What led some to the outbreak of fire? In the middle of a plane, for example, as an airliner crashes. UBS. Number 6 in September 2010. It came back to a fire caused by a platform of lithium-ion batteries. Another possible source of the fire could be an electrical fault. In September 1998, Swiss Airlines Flight 111 crashed. It is believed that the reason is due to the outbreak of fire in the driver's cabin as a result of faulty wire connections. The electrical fire caused many flight systems to malfunction, including signal attempts and SATCOM. In the case of flight MH370, it may have been the sudden communications outage, and the deviation from the scheduled course. The follow-up may have been a direct response to the fires. The 2 planes may have tried to turn around, and return to Malaysia, to attempt an emergency landing, at the nearest suitable airport, but you have not read any of this. Attempts instead, MH370 arrived on its way and remained in the air for another 6 hours. Some have assumed that the crew was not in control of the aircraft, as a result of a sudden, or gradual, drop to adjust the steering wheel. For example, when the crew of Hero's Flight 522 failed to control the plane, in August 2005 the pilot lost consciousness. Directly the plane forms, flying for 2 hours, using the autopilot, until the fuel runs out of course. The pilots are trained to deal with such accidents. In the event of a loss of pressure, in the cockpit there is an automatic system. A programmer works to deploy oxygen masks. To award pilots just enough time to make an emergency landing. To heights breathing becomes possible.